Hi, this is Jim Cranston from 7 Every Minute, 7everyminute.com, the podcast website about reimagining your life. Thanks for joining me today to talk about, we're going to continue talking about SMART goals. So let's get started. If you like what you hear today, please leave a like, subscribe, tell your friends, send me a message. So tonight we're actually going live from the field. That's why it's a different background, whole different scenario. And I'm getting myself very confused because I have a mouse that doesn't affect the device that's recording. The device that's recording has a little to do with where the mouse is operating. And if you notice, I don't have my glasses on because I forgot my reading glasses, so you get to see me without glasses. So all many new things tonight. Thank you so very much for joining me. And we want to talk a little bit more about goals. And as we said before, carefully designed goals, specifically what we call SMART goals, S-M-A-R-T. And it's an acronym. We'll talk about that in a second. You might recall we've been talking about SMART goals for the past 2 episodes now, and we're going to go through the entire series of the 5 characteristics of SMART goals. And a quick reminder, they're specific goals, they're measurable, and how you can actually determine whether you're making progress or not. They're achievable or actionable, which is what we'll talk about tonight, and they're relevant or reachable goals. And finally, they're time-based, or they have a deadline, is another way of saying that. So like I said in previous episodes, we cover specific goals, and those are goals that lead to very clear and particular outcomes. There's something very specifically you're trying to accomplish. And then last week, we talked about measurable goals and how that can help you track your progress and see how close you're getting to your goal, and also keep you motivated, because it's always more fun to do something when it's bringing you somewhere where you expect to go. So tonight, we're going to focus on the A of SMART. And that's the A stands for actionable or achievable or actionable, depending which one's more important to you. But we just before we go into that one, and I think it's worth covering a little bit what we talked about in the past 2 episodes. Like I said, it's specific goals are goals that really focus on a particular outcome. And so the example we gave is like trying to save $100 instead of just saying, I want to save money. When it's something specific, it gives your brain something to hang on to. And so once it has a real goal that it can work towards, then your brain is very good about figuring out solutions and helping you get to where you want to be. Measurable goals are kind of related to that, because when it's measurable, it gives you a way to track your progress, like we just said. And we kind of underestimate how important that is. But if you think about any large goal that you've ever had, you know that at some point you kind of know you're making progress, but there's nothing you can really point to say that you're making progress. And so that kind of gets a little bit deflating, I guess, is kind of the word I'm thinking of, because you want to be excited about what you're doing. But before you were 22% towards your goal, now you're 24% towards your goal. You think you're 24%, or maybe it's 30%, and you don't know really where you are. And I'll talk about that later on in the context of actionable and achievable goals. But having something that's measurable really is important to help keep you motivated and moving forward on that. So the actionable, achievable piece of SMART goals, those are really important as well, because if you make a goal too nebulous, too undefined, then it's very hard, along with all the other things, to really keep yourself motivated. So kind of actionable, achievable are kind of two ways to look at the same thing, kind of 2 sides of the same coin, as it were. Achievable means the goal is realistic. So something you actually can accomplish with your current resources and constraints. Actual means you can take concrete steps towards actually, making progress on it, starting right now. And that's really an important piece, the starting right now piece, because if something is not actionable, you can say, well, I should work on my goal tonight. What am I going to do? I didn't really make any actionable steps on this. But if you write down something specific when you go to work on it tonight, there's something you can open your notebook or look on your computer or whatever and say, oh, that's right. This is the next thing I can do. And that's a very important piece for keeping you motivated and actually making progress. And so sorry, I'm looking at 2 things tonight. It's actually very distracting. So an example of that is, you say, well, I want to, by next month, I want to run a marathon. And that's actually on the achievable piece of it. The achievable piece is much like actionable. Like I say, they're really kind of two sides of the same coin. Achievable is something that is plausible for you to do. You could say, like we just said, run a marathon and maybe run a marathon by next month, right? That's a good goal, has a deadline and has something specific to do. But in reality, if you've never run before, the chances of getting up to marathon level in a month probably isn't achievable. But if you said something like, well, maybe by Thanksgiving, which is a number of months away, I'm going to run a 5K, just a little tiny race. That might be challenging for you to do, but it's probably achievable. And so it kind of pushes you a little bit without making it so that you're more likely to fail. If you said I was going to run a marathon, you might start in the marathon, but the chances of you finishing it are probably pretty slim. If you took a few months to start practicing and you said you wanted to run a little 5K race, it's about around 4 miles, still a difficult thing to do if you not haven't been a runner for the rest of your life, but now you're trying something new, still something that's difficult to do. So it pushes you a little bit, but it's probably achievable. So now, how do you know if a goal is truly achievable? And there's a few questions to ask yourself. One of the first questions, of course, is do you have the necessary resources? If you're going to run, well, that's basically a pair of running shoes. That's pretty straightforward. But if it's something like, well, I want to learn to play the piano. Okay, do you even have access to a keyboard or piano? Because if you don't, it's going to probably be pretty hard to play the piano. You can practice on a desktop or whatever, and I've done that. But it certainly doesn't give you the same feedback as knowing you hit the right note when you're just imagining the notes you're hitting. So, do you have the necessary resources to follow that goal? And then if you have some other goal that necessarily doesn't need equipment per se, but it's something like, well, I want to travel to Europe for 6 months. Well, do you have the savings to travel to Europe for 6 months, or do you have a plan to save enough, or a plan how you're going to make money when you're in Europe or whatever? So we got to kind of have our ducks in a row a little bit as to, do we have the resources to really pursue this goal? And like I said, I apologize. My screen is behaving differently than one first might expect. Secondly, do you have the skills that are needed? So we talked about this last week a little bit, of using your skills. And say one of the things you want to do is become a consultant in your retirement years for something to do, just to learn something new, and you're going to be a consultant to help other people do difficult projects. Well, one of the things you need are the skills to do whatever it is you're trying to teach. And if you're retiring from a job where you can leverage the skills from your job, of course, that works really well. But if you don't really have the skills, you got to kind of sit back for a second and say, how can I be a consultant in something I don't know anything about? Well, so maybe you have to go get training and learn how to do it. And there's nothing wrong with that. But then you have to build that into your schedule and into your overall outlook as to how you're going to achieve this goal. And finally, actually not finally, but third, do you have control over the outcome? And this is kind of a subtle one, but it's one that we often we put into our goals and forget that our goal is to do something that we don't, or how we measure our goal is something that we don't have control over. So if something depends on external factors, something like, well, I want my child or my grandchild to get nothing but straight A's in school. Well, you can have some input towards that, but you don't actually control how that happens. But what you can do is you can make a goal something that is more likely to get the outcome that you want. So something like, well, I'll help my child with their homework, or my grandchild with their homework for 30 minutes every day, or something where you actually control the output so you can help them reach the goal that you would like, but the outcome that you would like actually. But your goal has to be the thing that you control. You can want a specific output, but just wanting something doesn't mean that you control the factors that go into it. If the child just isn't interested in the course you're trying to help them with, for example, then they're probably not going to get straight A's realistically. But that's a little bit, you set up a wrong goal. You set up a goal that's based upon somebody else's actions. Your goal has to be related to your actions and things that you can control. And so even though you may want a goal that's really big, I want peace in the Mideast, huge goal, you probably can't control that output. You can control things that maybe bring that output. And so that's where you have to differentiate between those things. You have to focus on things like teaching your grandchild how to do better at math. That you can have an input on, but you can't control their math grade. And finally, is the timing realistic? We often underestimate how long things take. Certainly, I know I do that a lot, and I do a lot of project work, and I have my own internal factor that we're not going to talk about right now. Of usually, what I do is I take an estimate, best case, worst case estimate, and a likely outcome, and I work backwards on that, and I put about usually a pretty large multiplier on it because I know from experience that I've gone and tried to think of all the factors that I think will affect the output, but in reality, things have a way of just taking more time than you expect. Anything like just setting up for this. I was a couple minutes late. Thought I had plenty of time, and since I'm recording off my phone instead of my computer, it's a different interface. And I should have hit one particular button on the screen, and instead I hit the back button on the phone and dumped me completely out of the program. And so that took like 4 minutes to recover. Not a huge thing, but it's just life throws little unexpected things in your way. And so your goal shouldn't be totally destroyed by something like that. You have to allow enough time to make sure that the timing is realistic. You know, something and just an example, you think, well, I'm going to write a little family memoir, say. I should be able to do that in a couple months, maybe 6 months at the most. So maybe instead you give yourself a year, or, you know, at least appreciate the progress you made in 6 months. And if the memoir isn't completely done, say, okay, I made some progress, not quite where I want it to be. Now what can I do to finish it from here? You know, it's really important that when life causes things to change, that your goals are flexible enough that you have a way to recover without just beating yourself. I'll talk about that in a second. But that's not to say that your deadlines and things like that don't matter. They do, but it's something to learn from, not something to beat yourself up with. We've talked about that a lot, that you really don't want to talk down to yourself because that's not motivating in any way, but it is a good opportunity to learn from things. And the next time you set a goal, I say, I think this should take 3 months. But you know, last time I forgot how long it took to get things together to start and things like that. So learn from when things don't go quite like you expect, and then be ready to adjust as things go along. And you know, and like I said, it doesn't mean you want to set super easy goals, so you always reach your goal in the timeline that you want, but you do want to stretch yourself a little bit, and you want to have it so that you have to, you know, reach a little bit into the difficult area, and kind of makes you grow a little bit, but it isn't so far out of reach that you get discouraged and give up. Remember, the whole point of this is to kind of move yourself forward on your goals in your life. It's not to beat yourself up in any way. It's to find a way to move forward that works the best for you. And so instead of saying, you know, oh, I'll write a best-selling book in 6 months, right? Even though you may have some of the skills that are needed, let's say that you used to be a teacher and you're used to writing all the time, but it's all short things, little lesson plans, stuff like that. Now you're trying to do this whole big book. It's a different thing. So you have some of the experience that you would need, but you don't have all the experience. Again, you want to set yourself a challenging goal, but it has to be realistic. So let's talk about actionable. Actionable is the other half of achievable. And an actionable goal, the big hallmark of an actionable goal, we talked about a little bit before. Big hallmark of an actionable goal is it has some concrete step or some particular thing that you can do. Actually, it's right there, you know, in black and white on the paper, that you can actually do the next step and move forward towards your goal. It's not big, it's not theoretical, it's not, well, you know, I'd like to lose weight. Oh, I'd like to travel or something like that. It is, you know, I'm going to go out and I'm going to buy nothing with sugar in it. It's I'm going to sit down and look at plane fares and decide how much money I have to save so I can take a trip across the country. Whatever it is, it's something that's very actionable. So when you set aside time to work on your goal, you have something very specific that you're trying to do. It's not some amorphous thing that, oh, I should probably spend some time, and you kind of wander around and you look at Travelocity or whomever, Google flights for a while, and you don't really make any progress on anything. It's the very next step. That's an actionable goal. It's a very specific action or task. And remember that we talked about specific very early on as the the basis of SMART goals. It has to be something very specific. And what that does is that leads directly into making actionable steps to reach your goal. So another example might be something like, well, I want to be more, I'd like to be more active in my community. I'd like to be more involved with the people around me. Totally vague goal. What does that mean? It can range from anything like walking out your door saying hi to somebody walking by and you're done. Reach my goal. Done. Yay. All done. But saying something like, I'll volunteer at the food bank every Thursday for 3 months. That's something where you know what you intend to do, you have a way to measure it, and you actually then go on and do something very specific. Again, the big part about actionable is something very specific, so you know exactly what it is you have to do next. I say, the big test for whether a goal is actionable or not is you can say, what is the very next step I need to do to move forward on that goal? If you can't answer that question pretty straightforwardly, immediately, probably your goal is not actionable enough because you're trying to figure it out as you're trying to do it, which isn't a real good way to get things done. So an example that I'll take from my own life, actually, let's say you want to declutter your home. We all tend to accumulate stuff, some of us more than others. Like I said, this one, quite frankly, is drawn from personal experience, and I'll talk about that in a second, but the big goal might feel overwhelming. Say you've lived in the same house for many years, decades, whatever. The kids were there, the kids moved out. You've just accumulated stuff. And one day you wake up and you go, holy cow, this place is just like full of stuff. I mean, it's like full of stuff. You got to break it down in little steps to make something actionable. So I'll clean one drawer. I'll start with one drawer in the kitchen or whatever. And then after that, you move on to the next small step. Like I said, this is a real world example for me. In my life, my house has become a series of little piles of papers that I will take care of tomorrow. And just by nature of my work, both this work and my day job, I'm an engineer, as you may recall, I said before, I accumulate a lot of paper, and I mean a lot of paper. And plus running my own business, this is an actual business, that you accumulate a lot of paper for that. And it's just, there's a lot of things to keep track of. And everything is kind of semi-neatly sorted into little piles, but there's a lot of little piles. Because if you're always going to clean it up tomorrow, or eventually after enough tomorrows come and go, you'll find out that pretty much everywhere you said is just covered with papers. And so instead of having this huge cleaning goal, that's it, I'm going to clean the entire house, the basement, garage, blah, 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 everything all at once. If you break things down into little kind of non-judgmental small steps, progress becomes pretty much self-rewarding, And I found when I did that, I was more likely to spend 10 minutes making a little bit of progress on something because I never had to feel like I didn't have enough time. If you set a big goal and you say, no, I'm going to clean the entire kitchen, all the counters are going to wash the front of the countertop, get all the counters clear, wash the countertops down, clean the front of the counters, blah, 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 blah. It's kind of like, wow, that's like a weekend worth of work. It's kind of, well, I don't have a weekend because I have other things to do. So you never get started on it. But if you walk by and you say, no, that section of the counter, that has magazines that I meant to read 2 months ago. And you clean up that section of the counter. And then the next time you walk in, you go, place looks a little better. So I'm going to clean that little pile over there for 5 minutes. You don't get through that whole pile, but you clean a little bit of it. Now you make some more progress. Next time you have 5 minutes, you can finish it and you kind of, now 2 sections of the counter look better. And so there's kind of, by breaking things down like that, the big bonus, like I said, it's kind of non-judgmental. It's not kind of like, if I didn't get the whole pile done, I failed. What you're looking for is incremental progress. And by doing things in little steps, you always get those little bits of incremental progress. But the other really big bonus that came around just totally kind of snuck up on me. I don't know why. But the second big bonus, sometimes unexpectedly, I look around and I go, wow, all those little steps added up into something really significant that beforehand, I thought was just insurmountably large goal. And in this particular case, I had cleaned out some shelves in the kitchen and temporarily put it in the hallway next to it, and cleaned out some stuff in the office and put it in the hallway next to it to sort. And bit by bit, I sorted the papers, bit by bit, took everything from that I'd taken off the shelves in the kitchen, either discarded it or put it back in the shelves orderly. And the other day I was walking down and looked at the hall and go, the hallway is completely empty. And suddenly, poor dog walked in, like, what, are we moving? What's going on? And but I wasn't looking, my goal wasn't to clean the hallway. I mean, that was kind of the underlying goal. But if I'd said it won't count until I clean the whole hallway, it would have been a huge job. It would have been a just slog, trudging through it for days or whatever. And it would have been kind of like, am I making progress on my goal? But since my goal was just to clean little stacks of paper and to clean up the stuff in the kitchen, discard some of it, recycle the bottles and things like that, each one of those was a goal that I reached. And then I turned around and looked and thought, wow, suddenly the big goal happened because I just kept pushing steadily and slowly on the same thing. So, be careful about non-specific goals. It sounds like, non-specific goals are like, the good intentions, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. Wanting to be more involved with something is far different than actually setting goal of saying, this is how I can be involved in something. And like I said, don't forget the S of SMART goals. It's just the specific part that has a huge impact on making things then actionable. And of course, achievable and actionable, as we kind of hinted at, they work together. A goal that's achievable but not actionable, that just kind of remains kind of a concept or a dream, because if you have nothing where you can actually do anything, even though the goal seems like it should be achievable, if you don't know what to do next, you never make any progress on it. And of course, the converse of that, if you have something that's actionable but not achievable, well, that just kind of leads to frustration. I mean, yes, you can go out and you can run a couple miles, but you're trying to think you're going to run a 4-minute mile and it's just not something you're physically able to do. You're just going to get frustrated. So the two of them kind of work hand in hand. You need both achievable and actionable in the proper balance to allow you to make progress and kind of lead you to success. And just beware this real quickly. I know we're running a little bit long. It's a fun topic. There's a lot of interesting aspects to it, even though it seems very simple. And that's why I'm doing this over the steps, because we talked about SMART goals a number of times in the past, but we always cover them in just one episode. And I realize that it needs a lot more time than that. We'll be talking more about that because I'm going to do a webinar that'll go into even a little more deeply. But there's a couple common mistakes that come around the block pretty often. One of the ones is kind of like, let's call it the New Year's, the New Year's resolution syndrome. And that's kind of like, you're all excited, you're going to make these goals, and you set too many goals at once. So you have all these goals you're going to do. I'm going to change how I eat, and I'm going to change how I exercise. I'm going to change how I save money. And you have 5 or 10 major things that you want to do all at once. It's just too much. You kind of lose your focus. And if you don't focus your energy in a few areas, you're probably going to get discouraged, because when you look at the whole picture, it'll seem like you're not making progress on anything. You're making little tiny progress on a bunch of things, but it doesn't seem obvious because you're trying to do so much at once. Second, we hinted at this, avoid being too vague. I'll eat healthier isn't an actionable goal, right? We already talked about that. You got to make it the very next step. What's it going to be? I'm going to eat 3 balanced meals this week. So, okay, then the very next step is I have to buy the ingredients to make a balanced meal. And part of that is I'll prepare 3 balanced meals and they'll have a vegetable in them. So, okay, I have to buy some things and I have to buy a vegetable. Totally actionable. You can go to the store, you can look up a recipe online, whatever it is, the next thing to do. It can't be vague. It has to be very specific and actionable. It gives you clear actions to take. Excuse me. I've been working outside today. It was kind of dry. And importantly, don't set goals on what other people think. We've talked about this a lot, right? A goal has to matter to you personally. It has to be something that really ignites your passion, consistent with your vision and just your passion in life has to move you forward. It can't be what somebody else said you should be involved in. They can say whatever they want to say, basically. But if it's not something that matters to you, you're not going to really be able to put in enough heart and effort to really make it succeed. Finally, don't be too binary. I know I'm for the longest time, I suffered from this, and I've worked very hard to try and move away from it. But binary is kind of the all or nothing sort of thing. It's kind of like, I'm going to do this. If I don't do this, it's a total failure. So it's kind of like back to my hallway example. I'm going to clean the hallway. And in a week, if the hallway isn't clean and there's still a couple papers left there, it's a failure. I might as well give up because I can't make any progress. If you do little teeny steps, then the progress happens in each little step and you keep yourself motivated. And it's not a binary thing. It's kind of like, wow, I really thought I could put in 10 minutes today and only put in 5 minutes. Then you have kind of a little subtask there. How can I set aside another 5 minutes each day so I make progress faster on my goals? Try and avoid the all or nothing syndrome, because if you don't, it's very easy to make yourself discouraged. And by being a little more flexible in how you set your goals, it really helps keeps you motivated and allows you to tackle much bigger tasks, because it's the incremental progress that keeps you enthused about it. So that's really kind of what I wanted to cover tonight on the A part of SMART goals, the actionable and attainable part of it. Because, a lot of us are kind of reimagining our lives as we get older, and all throughout our lives we did this. I mean, and we focus more on as we age. That's probably one of the big things that we talk about. But in reality, even when you were younger, you reach different points in your life. You're in your mid-20s, early 20s, mid-20s, and you decide, this is something I really want to do, and you change your focus a little bit. So we're always reimagining what we want to do with our lives. And it's really important, I think, to always, SMART goals work at any point in your life. The whole point is to help you turn your dreams into reality. And it helps. It's a simple framework. It's a simple methodology that takes a lot of the mystery out of setting goals, because a lot of people set goals. And just to go back real quick to the New Year's Eve resolutions thing, people, probably most of the goals that people set on New Year's Eve are just the worst goals in the world. They're too big, they're not specific, there's no way to measure if they succeeded or not. They have 10 goals all at once. It's just a total mess. And they quickly don't reach the point that they want to reach. And so then they get discouraged with themselves, and then the negative self-talk starts, and they say, oh, you'll never amount to anything, you'll never do anything. And there's just far better ways to approach that give you more power to yourself, so that as difficult things arise in life, it's not that your whole world falls apart. Maybe one aspect of your life falls apart pretty strong, but maybe gets pretty upset. But if you have a process in place to give you momentum to get through that, then you realize that it was a setback, but not a total disaster, that you learn something from it and you learn how to get past it. And that's one of the key things about SMART goals. It's just a tool. There's nothing magic about it. It doesn't make things happen that couldn't happen other ways, but it gives you a very simple framework to just help you move forward towards the things that are important to you, that really play into your life vision, the passion of your life, that keep you motivated. And like I said, the achievable and actionable parts of it really ensure that you're being realistic and practical in your approach. It helps prevent you from just getting in the situation where you set things that are unrealistic and then you become disappointed in yourself, because that doesn't really help you at all. Excuse me one second. Clearly, I was in an area that was dusty today, and it was a little more dusty than I expected. So when combined with all the other goals we talked about, specific and measurable, which we already covered, and then relevant and time-based goals, which are coming up in the next couple of episodes, like I said, I think it gives you a really powerful framework for creating meaningful change in your life and helping you to move forward and really get to the point where you want to be. Because remember, the whole point of this, this being life, isn't to just put up with things, but it's trying to make progress towards the things that matter towards you. And so SMART goals are one step of it. Envisioning your life is another whole topic we'll talk about, is another piece of it. How to re-envision your life is another very specific piece of it. And there's tips and tricks to help you with that and help your brain get on board. We've talked about that in the past. We're going to put that together more clearly. And so all these different things are just tools to help you get to the point where you find life more enjoyable, no matter what your circumstances are. I mean, you don't have to be independently wealthy and trying to figure out how you're going to spend all your money that you're making every year to be happy. And actually, there's a lot of studies that show that things like wealth by itself, or getting something special by itself, does not bring happiness. It is making a change in your life in a positive direction is what brings you the most happiness. So your homework this week is to take one goal that you're working on, you know where this is going, and evaluate it. First, is it truly achievable given your current situation? And is it actionable? Can you identify the very next step you have to take? Now, we've talked about this in pieces before, but I really want you to kind of focus. Take a non-trivial goal that you've been thinking about, and it could be something related to your retirement, something related to your family. It could be anything at all, but non-trivial is really kind of the operative word here, because it's something that if you don't pay attention to it, it's unlikely you'll actually be able to do it. So if it's something that is really important to you and you've been thinking about it for a while, something like that's actually a really good goal to work on. You've been thinking about it for a while, but you haven't really made much progress on it. Take that goal, and hopefully you've already gone through the specific and measurable pieces of it from the past 2 weeks, and now add the actionable steps to it. First of all, make sure it's achievable, and presuming that it is, then set the actionable next steps that you'd have to take. And remember, the next step doesn't have to be some monstrous thing. Like we said, if you're planning a trip in 2 years, the next step may be looking where plane fares are, looking up when people say the best time to buy plane tickets, or where's the most fun place to go, or where's the most economical place to go, whatever. These are all important things, but take the very next actionable step. Do those, write them down, because keep track of it. We're going to do more things with that. And if you haven't done the same thing for that same goal with specific and measurable, do it, and we'll work it all out together. So as always, please remember, thank you very much for joining me. Obviously, I know I ran a little long tonight. Exciting topic. I love it. But remember that there's a lot of stuff going on in the world right now. We have a war in Europe. We have unrest basically in every continent of every major continent of the world right now has unrest going on. And so there's a lot of things. UKR7.com. Let's see, can I put it up here? Oh, life is wonderful. UKR7.com. That's our list of links to help people in Ukraine, and which is one of the big areas that we support. World Central Kitchen is another. WCK.org. They work throughout the world, help people generally after disasters, and we've just had a couple big disasters in Asia. With the earthquakes, it's just made a real mess of large areas and a lot of deaths. These two organizations bring a lot of good to the world. They help a lot of people. But as we always talk about, there's a lot of ways to help people. These are big national and international organizations. That's really great. But there's also local organizations. If you want to do things more locally, around me, there's a food bank and things like that. And maybe you're just either not in a position or a mindset right now to be making donations to something. Totally understandable. But remember that you can always do little teeny things that make huge impacts in life. It can be actually. I just heard this on the radio as I'm traveling for work right now, which is why I'm in a hotel room. But a woman talking about she works in a school. And I've heard other people say similar things, and how much the interacting with the kids, especially kids of that come from troubled backgrounds, and she can bring a little joy. She tries to bring a little joy into their lives, and usually they respond so positively to it that it brings joy into her life. And so it's easy to forget that how much benefit we get, and this isn't trying to be all about us, but people say, well, I don't really have the energy to go around saying hi to everybody I meet. It's kind of like, actually, you probably do, because I can't tell. Where was this morning? Where was it? Oh, one of the people who works at the place where I'm doing work right now. I don't really know this woman well. I've met her 2 or 3 times when I passed through, because I work there occasionally. And she saw me. She was driving out, and I gave her a big smile. She saw who it was, and she smiled. And that's all it was. I smiled at her. It was not hard. And what I got back was a huge smile and a big wave. So it kind of like picked me up for the morning too. So what you give comes back. And it's just a good way to change your focus from looking inside you and all the things you don't like about what's going on right now to bringing joy to other people and realizing and saying to yourself, I really do have the power to bring joy to the rest of the world. So again, as always, remember, one of the best ways to care for yourself is to care for others. It changes your perspective in the world in a very positive way. And if so, like I said, if you can and you're able, ukr7.com, wck.org, two places where you can donate on a national or international scale, and local charities, and just smiling at somebody in the street, just acknowledging them, just anything, wish them a good day, wish them a good morning, just make eye contact with them. And, a lot of times people feel that nobody in the world notices them. And something as simple as this, greeting in their eye and smiling, nodding, whatever, just acknowledging that they're there as a person can change their whole outlook on the day. As always, thank you for stopping by. If you found something interesting and useful, please pass it along. Please leave a like, subscribe, and drop me a comment if there's something else you'd like to hear. Have a great week. Remember to live the life that you dreamed of, because that's the path to true contentment. Love and encouragement to everyone. See you next week on 7 Every Minute and 7everyminute.com. Thank you so much.